Welcome to Careers Are Curvy on Small Talk. I'm Subha Chandrasekaran, your host and coach, and I'm joined by my co host Hasita. Together, we will take you through 20-30 minute long episodes on various ways to level up your professional life and get smart on the curvy road to success.
Hi,
Hi there, how are you doing, Hasita?
I am doing too many things. How about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of really charged up and excited today for this episode and just, kickstarting the new season. So many ideas and topics and thoughts brimming in my head.
Hmm. And we're also looking at this whole season differently. It's possible that the same topic or the same universe of topics will flow over into three, four episodes, perhaps. That's the hope. And we're
Yeah,
really
yeah,
ready for it, I think. And that's an exciting proposition, actually.
very true. And you and I, we always feel like there are signs from the universe that tell us we're on the right track. And we got one such sign yesterday.
Yeah.
Roger Federer's commencement speech at Dartmouth this year. Obviously, a masterclass in giving commencement speeches. I don't think he can do anything at any other level.
And I like that we are both kind of believing the fact that Federer himself has given us a sign that we are good to go. So he
I mean, if
personally
it
signed
was,
off on this season of the podcast.
I mean, if you're looking for a sign, look for the big ones, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think both of us devoured that speech, and I really love the core message that everything ultimately is a skill. And the way he talks about talent being a skill, which even I've never thought of it that way. He said I
Hmm.
didn't kind of, yes, maybe it's something he has an inclination towards, but uh, it's the additional skills that he brought to it, right? Discipline as a skill,
Yeah.
perseverance as a skill, that took him to the level that he reached. And I think that ties in with a lot of what we are trying to say even earlier, but specifically this season.
I mean,
Mhm.
this
Yeah, yeah,
podcast is one product of a lot of, in-depth conversations and chats that have taken place to that extent. So for me, what really stood out from that episode, the first thing that stood out actually was the fact that he can still be emotional and crack up at the end of a speech of that nature, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
there's something really charming about people who are not afraid of being those emotional beings that they are, which we saw, we don't hear him speak as much. This is one of the few
true.
times when he comes out and shows that side of him as well. And the other thing that stood out is also in the same line as what you were talking about in terms of talent being a skill. And he says effortlessness is not that effortless, right? Like it's just because
Mm,
you make it look easy doesn't mean it's easy. And I think we discount that so much, both in our personal and professional lives, that when we see
yeah,
someone
yeah.
who's so doggedly good at something, we don't see the pursuit of that excellence, coming to the fore. It must have taken them years to make it look simple.
Correct, correct. No, and that also is a reason why many of us think that we can't do something
Hmm.
because we see another person do it so effortlessly, and so the mind tells us this is supposed to be easy, and for me it's not. I'm
Hmm.
starting at level 0,
Yeah.
and so I'll probably never get there, so I won't even try. I'll just put it down to one of those things that I can't do or won't be good at.
That's so true. And I think we see it more and more. I myself had my share of the really charming leaders whom I aspired to, but knew I would never get to being them kind of scenarios. And I think it happens when you run a team as well, wherein I think a lot of the work that you've done in the past now becomes so easy. Actually, to be honest with you, Subha, my work has simplified itself to a significant extent. And that's by will. It's not that I
Yeah.
just decided one fine morning that, okay, I'm not going to do three things, right? But if I don't do those three things, then who's empowered, equipped sufficiently to be able to do them? And therefore,
Yeah.
then I think also the bigger challenge, at least as a leader, becomes what then is my role in the system? Like, do I still have a role to play? But you're right. I mean, on the other side, when you're standing from there, it really looks quite unattainable. or it looks like some magic pill that this other person has swallowed and we don't have
Correct.
access to.
Correct. And that kind of brings me to what I want to talk about today, that because it looks like a magic pill, most folks find it very daunting when they are told to maybe think about something on a larger scale, or something for the future, because they see others doing it so effortlessly. In the last few weeks, quite a few middle management to senior leaders that I've been coaching, when we talk about what goals you want to set for the coaching engagement, something that comes up so consistently is that the feedback I'm given is that I need to think strategically,
Hmm,
that I
hmm,
need to
hmm,
think big, that I need to have
hmm,
a vision, right? And that's understandable. For organizations, there's a period in which you are an individual contributor, it's about you, and then it's about you and your team. But if you've spent some time managing a team, then it becomes about you, the team, and what are you doing for the business,
hmm, hmm. Yeah.
right? And that's when they start hearing these words of strategic thinking, big picture thinking, vision, and it feels very daunting, because that's something that the CEO or any CXO is doing because they just know how to do it.
Hmm.
And it's very far for me, and I don't know what this means.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, that shift in perspective sometimes, I think, like you said, it broke down, into the self, the team, and then the organization. Essentially, what you're saying is by the time you come to the third level, the focus of your attention has moved from internal communications to the client side of things, right? Like when you're thinking business, what you're doing is you're thinking customer rather.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about it is not sufficiently compelling for them? What about it is not really fitting with their scheme of things? And I think that's something you learn as a continuous process. To this day, by virtue of having been a freelancer, a lot of client facing engagement was always on my plate from the first day. So there was really no concept of self plus team. It was self and the client, right? And
Mm.
then the team kind of
Yeah,
came
yeah,
later.
true.
But also, there was always that owning of the client facing perspective. Even to this
Mm.
day, yes, we receive rejections, we receive, ghostings, and all of those things happen. And even at the very early stages of engaging with someone. And what that tells us is that something about this didn't work. And therefore,
Mm.
there's an opportunity there for you to think about what didn't work, first of all. Is that a client level problem? Is that an industry level problem? And then for you to decide what problem you want to solve. So I know it's a very simplistic example of thinking, strategically, but that's really what we're asking for. And in saying that, I wonder how many times I've articulated this to anyone in the system. I probably haven't.
Yeah, yeah. I think fundamentally realizing that it's a muscle, it's a skill, and you will build it only if you intentionally start trying, right?
Yeah.
And the next step, typically in these conversations with my coaches, is this stark realization that okay, it's not a divine light that will shine on me. If I'm 4 years 5 years into the role, I'll get smarter and the light will shine. But
Hmm.
I have to get very intentional about it. And now when I'm thinking, okay, that's the next step, I realize there is not a minute available in the day for me to do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And very often it immediately slips into a discussion on the time availability
Hmm.
and the need to create time to think strategically, right? And it's a kind of a hill to climb for many, because they don't initially see it as something that is so at that skill level. It's like, okay, even if I create time, what do I do in that time, because I
Hmm.
don't know how to
Hmm.
think strategically.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's the other way. It starts with freeing your mind of the day-to-day tasks, the tactical stuff, and just I tell them, just block your calendar for an hour a day. Just start with that,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And give yourself the time to process, observe, what are you doing, what are your teams working on, what's
Hmm.
been the feedback trend in the last few weeks, in a
Hmm.
very at a very gut level. Just start with that. Give yourself the opportunity to kind of think at the gut level and bring together all the things that have been happening around you.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you've just been fighting fire after fire. Some have been successful battles, some have not, and you take
But
away
they've all
something
been
from that.
battles, categorically.
Correct,
That we forget.
correct.
And just sometimes even pushing the working day out by an hour, because then you're not waking up and thinking, okay, the first task of my day is to work, and the last thing I do before I go to bed is work. Yes, we all have, long hours, depending on what industries, domains we are working in. But the fact remains that work cannot then become, or rather, the act of doing work. And we've discussed this so many times, Subha, that
Yeah,
we sometimes also have a tendency to fill our calendars with things that make us enjoy the busyness of things, because that is what we
yeah,
have been
yeah,
taught is the marker of efficiency, or the marker
correct.
of delivering good stuff is to have a task list of 10 things and then tick off at least 9 on a daily basis, right? But what
Correct.
strategic thinking really is asking of you is to completely switch off from that level of operation.
Yeah,
And whether it takes weeks, months, and sometimes it does take months, probably years, to even figure out, hey, what is, and it's a lot of work, right? I mean, firstly, is this the journey that I want to be on? Is the first question that will come up, because we are all inherently, I mean, self-serving, right? Selfish is such a, it's
correct.
seen as such a bad word. But finally, the moment you set off on this journey, you have that time blocked up. The first question you have to face is, am I doing the right thing for myself? And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's the most pleasant question to ask at any point in time.
True. No, I think, I mean, just look at you. You said that some things have fallen in place, and you know that it's running the way it should, and that's freed up your time. But that's come with a lot of intentional work.
Yeah.
It's come with really thinking this through, that this is the shape that I want this firm to be. This is
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
look and feel of it. This is the role I want to play. This is the role that others have to play, etc. And that didn't come to you overnight, and that didn't come to you instantly. It came through the ups and downs of being busy and
Hmm.
doing the things that you need to do. But at some point, stepping back, and maybe you're 40 feet underwater and deep sea diving,
Meters,
but
meters, just yeah, fair.
it's the kind of
Yeah,
stepping back that you need to do sometime. And
yeah,
if that's, if you know, if the deep sea is not your thing, raising hand, then just block a conference room, take one of those tiny telephone booths that all these offices have. And
yeah.
if you're working from home, go sit in your balcony with just a diary or a plain piece of paper for an hour during the working day. This is also part of your contribution to your role.
And
And sit
yourself,
down.
firstly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sit down and think about what's working well in my team, what are the skills that we've built, what are we capable of. Because unless you make that start, it's very difficult to continue this journey of building the skill. So
Hmm.
the next few things that we'll talk about in terms of, finding mentors, in terms of looking at industry level what's happening, consuming more content, in terms of working on cross collaborative kind of teams, all of that, the starting point is a very strong understanding of where am I today,
Hmm. 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 In
right?
this
And what are
universe of
some of the
things.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What's happening around me? What are my teams capable of? What are our strengths? What are those skill sets? Because then you can start using really hardcore strategic thinking tools. Like if you need to do a SWOT analysis, or if you need to do some kind of a 5W on a certain situation, like you can't just start,
Yeah, it
right?
starts
Because
with
again,
what,
it
right?
becomes
Like
very
it's a,
narrow. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And honestly,
Yeah.
the strategic prerogative can be so wide, right? And I think that's the beauty and the joy of that job as well. To start thinking at a higher level means also thinking. We had a client last week, the pitch has gone really well. They're very happy with us. They think we are the right team. The only thing that's
Mm,
holding them back was actually the election season. Right? And they weren't sure
mm,
whether their industry would continue to be supported the way it is now if the dynamics of who's on top were to change. Fair, right? Like someone's bringing
yeah.
that perspective to you. So the real question is, how do you engage in that conversation if you've completely tuned off from the news of the day?
Correct,
And
correct.
some a lot of times that's the communication that you're trying to do. And as a leader, honestly, I think it's also a process of trial and error and keeping on, really, of
Hmm, hmm.
continuing to communicate these different metrics, ballpark figures to your team. It's not just about have we hit a certain number, but it's also the journey of how did we get there, because we want a process that can be replicated.
Correct. I think this is a great start to our conversation on just that big picture thinking. Thank you, Roger Federer. The takeaway from our conversation today for anyone who's been told, think big, where's your strategic vision, are you thinking strategically, is to first, acknowledge that it's a skill. Yes, maybe somebody is already doing it better than you and you feel like it's a talent they're born with. They're not. They have also honed this over the years. Acknowledge that, like starting today is better than not starting at all.
Hmm.
And to build this skill, create time to build it. Like anything, if I were to learn the piano, I have to set aside 1 hour for it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I have to actually sit at the piano. So I'm not going to build that skill by sitting here and listening to somebody else play and say, oh, they're born with that talent and I don't have the ability and I don't think I'll get there.
Hmm,
And
hmm,
then
hmm.
I'm making sure I won't. Take the time and start with just assessing where you are today and at a gut level, processing what all is happening for you, your team, and the organization,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that's a great place to start. And then let's see, I think we this is something we can continue to talk about as to what else you need to do. How do you build from here? What
yeah.
comes next?
So really hit that reset button. It's kind of sort of worth it in the long run, at least. I mean, sure, diving is one way to do it. I know a lot of friends who quit their
Crocheting is
jobs.
another.
Crocheting is another. Lots of people have quit their jobs after these life affirming experiences that tell you that, hey, you're alive. What are you going to do with it? Over and over again, apparently. But yeah, why not, take yourself out on a date and just sit in a coffee shop, read a book.
Yeah,
Honestly, the mind that is asking the questions is a different mind from the one that's answering it. And a lot of times, I think being on the battleground means that we are in that answer mode, and the joy of questioning is somewhere kind of lost in the process. But really, I think if we could hit that one reset button and say that, the next 1 month, I'm going to start my work day 30 minutes later. Whoever needs to be informed will be informed, and whatever needs to be done will be done. But that's what I'm going to do. And in those 30 minutes, we just keep the brain open to some ideas, some interesting water cooler conversations to percolate through. Talk to people in co working spaces who are from industries that we are not from. So
yeah,
many different ways, avenues of really exposing ourselves to the world in different ways. And this is something we also personally encourage in creative businesses. And we say that, go out, see the world, travel if you can,
correct,
go to museums, go
correct.
to, do some pottery if you can, because that's where the ideas are.
Yeah, no, I think strategic thinking, big picture thinking is also at certain leadership levels and above. uh, and why we're not even talking just small large organizations, even in like in your firm it's so important, and maybe
Yeah,
even more so because there's no investor or shareholder telling you what you need to achieve or where you
yeah,
need to be. So even in startups, a small team, a team that really needs to be there for the founder, all of them have to build that skill of strategic thinking. They have to keep generating ideas that will keep them alive over the next year, next year, next year. And the best starting point is start with creating some time for yourself
yeah.
and understand where you are today, and we'll take it from there.
We shall try going slower this week and tell us how it goes.
Yeah, do that. Try just blocking 2 to 3 p.m. I mean, honestly, you feel like a snooze after lunch anyway. Use that
Maybe
to
snooze
just,
for a couple of days, and then day three automatically like, okay, what am I doing?
yeah, yeah. So use that time to just let your mind wander and then it'll find its focus. Awesome. Great start to our season. Hope you enjoyed it, folks. And we'll, of course, be back with more. Bye.
Bye, see you.